You're listening to a podcast by the Center for Action and Contemplation. To learn more, visit cac.org.
Greetings, I'm Jim Finley.
And I'm Kirsten Oates.
Welcome to Turning to the Mystics.
Welcome everyone to Season 9 of Turning to the Mystics, where we're turning to an anonymous author who wrote The Way of a Pilgrim. And I'm here with Jim to discuss his 5th talk on The Way of a Pilgrim. Welcome, Jim.
Yes, good to be back together again. Yeah.
I thought what might be helpful as an opening is to read through all the instructions that have been given so far about the prayer. They're kind of interwoven throughout the story, but I thought I'd bring them together and just read them one after the other. And then I'll ask you some questions about them, Jim, if that's okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, great. So here we go. The continuous interior prayer of Jesus is a constant, uninterrupted calling upon the divine name of Jesus with the lips, in the spirit, in the heart, while forming a mental picture of his constant presence and imploring his grace during every occupation, at all times, in all places, even during sleep. The appeal is couched in these terms: Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. One who accustoms himself to this appeal experiences as a result so deep a consolation and so great a need to offer the prayer always that he can no longer live without it, and it will continue to voice itself within him of its own accord. Sit down alone and in silence. Lower your head, shut your eyes, breathe out gently, and imagine yourself looking into your own heart. Carry your mind, your thoughts, from your head to your heart. As you breathe out, say, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. Say it moving your lips gently, or simply say it in your mind. Try to put all other thoughts aside. Be calm, be patient, and repeat the process very frequently. The faculty of pronouncing words lies in the throat. Reject all other thoughts. You can do this if you will, and allow that faculty to repeat only the following words constantly. Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. Compel yourself to do it always. If you succeed for a time, then without a doubt, your heart also will open to prayer. We know this from experience. Here is a rosary. Take it, and to start with, say the prayer 3,000 times a day. Whether you are standing or sitting, walking or lying down, continually repeat, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. Say it quietly and without hurry, but without fail exactly 3,000 times a day, without deliberately increasing or diminishing the number. I reported to my starets, and he bade me to say the prayer 6,000 times a day, saying, be calm, just try as faithfully as possible to carry out the set number of prayers. God will vouchsafe you his grace. And then the last one, see that you preserve the habit and strengthen it. Waste no time, therefore, but make up your mind by God's help from today to say the prayer of Jesus 12,000 times a day. So there are all the instructions that we're given, and what we're missing out is the conversations going on in between, but you can feel the way the starets is upping the ante each time the pilgrim reports to him. So I have a couple of questions about for myself and maybe for anyone else who might be trying to take on this prayer as a practice. Should we be at 12,000 times a day at this point?
You see, my sense of it would be true to the spirit of the tradition and the story also. is notice that the whole story begins with the pilgrim in the midst of a life of devotional sincerity. That is, he's living the Christian life as he wanders about. In his vest pocket is the Bible over his heart. The 24th Sunday after Pentecost. So he's at prayer, efficacious unto holiness. Efficacious unto holiness. And so that's what we should be, where we are, in the sincerity of our desire to be open to God's experience and guidance in our life and so on, to live this love life that Christ modeled for us. That's where we should be. And we should also be, in our devotional sincerity, then faithful to a daily rendezvous with God in prayer. So it's like experientially rooted within ourselves. And each time we end our daily rendezvous, to ask God for the grace not to break the thread of that through the day. And the way we pray will be where we are at the moment. And typically where most of us are is we start out with Lectio Divina, meditation and prayer. We open the scriptures and we take a text. We read the passage as if God is personally saying that to us. Like we listen to God. Then meditation, we have a dialogue with God, meditatio, a loving dialogue. We might journal it out. And then the prayer is asking God for the grace to be true to it. That's where we should be. Mm-hmm. Next, if we're graced with a quickening, like the pilgrim, he's in the middle of the service, and he hears this text to pray always. But the point is, it strikes him in such a way that there's an inner necessity. He's baffled by it, understanding. And so how then can I then do this? And then he set out on it. So we're touched with a sense of oneness that we can't comprehend. But then there's the desire to abide in the depths so fleetingly glimpsed. And how do I do that? Like I don't understand what's happening to me. And this is the lure of grace calling us beyond a union with God, into depths of unitive oneness, beyond thought, beyond feeling, beyond emotion, beyond into these depths. And if we are on that path, then we should be faithful to what that path asks out of us, and that's the prayer. So each of the mystics we've been studying in the Turning to the Mystics podcast, each mystic in his or her own way, this is the point they're concerned about. See, we're in the midst of the devotional life, but how to discern the point where we've been quickened or awakened toward these more non-dual unitive states. See? And then how to follow the path of being ever more surrendered over and transformed by God in those states. And where we should be then is where we are in our sincere desire to be faithful to that. So we're at 12,000, which means really we're at the brink of the awakening, the Great Awakening. We should be at the brink of the Great Awakening. See? If we're just starting out with 3,000, what we're really doing with 3,000, notice if you say the prayer constantly, you're leaving thought behind. See? You're learning how not to think. And so you're really going beyond the boundaries of thought to the prayer. Then you should do that. See? So we should be where we authentically are, where we discern that we are, and then see where God has in mind. Just stay open to that, because we unexpectedly found ourselves here. We didn't plan on this. Right. Unforeseen. Yeah. And likewise, we can't foresee what's going to be unfolding out of our fidelity to these unfoldings. And that's in via, like on the way of our awakening heart. So that's my sense of it.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you, Jim. And I think for many people listening to the podcast, or like me listening and reading the book, they might be really touched by the story and feel alongside the pilgrim that sense of quickening, and the beauty in this story might be an opening, and they might feel called to try the prayer. So I know I've been trying it. You talk about that daily rendezvous, that quiet time. I know I've been trying the prayer in my daily rendezvous and enjoying it and finding it. You know, I'm really, there's a lot coming out of trying the prayer. I'm learning a lot of different things about myself and about the prayer.
Yeah, you know that we can, no matter where we are on this path, we can say the prayer at any time and benefit from it from where we are. So it's a very simple prayer just throughout the day, even the meaning of the prayer, like what this means. And of course, when we say, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, we're asking not for the mercy of God, because we already have it. We're asking for the grace of realizing we already have it. See, this way. It's a lovely way to go to sleep at night. Any time during the day, it's just so simple. It's like a grounding place. And so we can be receptively open to practice it as it's given to us where we are. Yeah.
That's a wonderful encouragement. Thank you, Jim. And along those lines, I did have a question about the rosary. So I didn't grow up Catholic, and I've never owned a rosary. And I'm just wondering, I'm quite intrigued by the idea of the rosary and how I might use it with this prayer.
All world religions, especially in the contemplative, devotional and contemplative, have like beads. Mm-hmm. And so the Orthodox Catholic, like the Pilgrim, they have the beads for counting the Jesus prayer on this way. And the Muslims have rosaries for counting the names of God, a dhikr, by God consciousness, and so on. And so the Catholic rosary, I love the rosary. I grew up Catholic. I used to say it a lot. I haven't said it for a long time, but I always carry my rosary with me. It's a kind of a sacramental for me. So what you could do if you're interested and you're new to the rosary, you could look up on the internet how to say the rosary. And basically what the rosary is, it's and you can Google and see what the rosary looks like. Get a rosary if you want one. And so what you do really is that in saying the rosary, basically what it is that it's a way of meditating on the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. So really, there's the joyful mysteries. The first mystery is following Scripture, is the Annunciation, the angel Gabriel announcing to Mary. And so you would start out with the joyful mysteries. And what you do with the joyful mysteries is you meditate on this. You meditate on your own annunciations, on how you've been visited by graces or awareness and so on. And so what you do is that you say the Hail Mary 10 times, like a decade. And so you say it 10 times. So the first half of the Hail Mary is from heaven. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women. And Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for it. The other half is our response to the angel. So it's an interesting contemplative practice because it's not a linear focusing on something. You're actually using the prayer as a kind of a mantra to be kind of intuitively, receptively open to the gift of Annunciation. And knowing that even as you practice the practice of the Annunciation, there may be little touches of Annunciations along the way, like visitations of graces in this way. Then when it ends, you end it, then you say the Lord's Prayer. And then you do the next joyful mystery, and so on. So the sorrowful mysteries are Jesus being judged before. You start with the first sorrowful mystery, it's the scourging of the pillar. Jesus falls and so on, and you meditate as you say the Hail Mary for each of the sorrowful mysteries, the Passion of Christ, on that really see Jesus on the greater love than this has no one that he lays down his life for his friends, and so we're not alone in our suffering. That out of love on the mystery of the cross, God has united with and one with us in our suffering. And so there's the consolation of the sorrowful mysteries as this redemptive love of God with us in our suffering. And so you'd say the 10 Hail Marys each time this way. You say the Lord's Prayer and so on. So you would go through the 5 joyful mysteries, and usually that'd be 5 decades, and usually that would be to say the rosary.
Okay.
Then the next time you say the rosary, you would do the sorrowful mysteries, the 5 sorrowful mysteries. Then the next time you would say the glorious mysteries, first is the resurrection. So the idea would be the full rosary is 15 decades.
Okay.
But typically when Catholics talk about saying the rosary, they talk about the 5 decades this way, meditating on the mystery of Christ who reveals our life to us in the presence of God. And some people, I like the rosary. I don't say it anymore, but it's a very contemplative practice. And you can see the semblance to the Jesus prayer because it's repetition. It's a repetition to stabilize the mind so the heart can be open to the mysteries of God's presence in our life. Yeah.
Amazing. And you've got a rosary there in front of you. I can hear it clinking around. But
Yeah.
there it is.
I'll put it down so it doesn't.
No, that's fine. I think it's, that's beautiful. So, Jim, with this, that's the traditional Catholic way of doing the rosary that you've just described. In this text, are they encouraging the pilgrim to use the rosary to count his 3,000 times or his 6,000 times?
Yeah. He's going to hand them. So he's going to say. So here's the thing. He's saying you've been quickened with this touch. The touch has left you with the desire to abide in this realm of the heart. And so the question is, well, how do you abide in the realm of the heart? You can't make this deepening of the realization of the realm of the heart, this realm of oneness, happen. But what you can do is assume the stance that offers the least resistance to be overtaken and carried into the realm of the heart. And so the Jesus prayer then is a way then of doing that. And so the idea of counting the beat, and he says this to this, start with 3,000 without deliberately going one more or one less. And what he's really doing isn't just in the Jesus prayer, he's dying to thought, because the thoughts are around the edges, but you don't think the thoughts that are arising. You just keep your focus on the words of the prayer, which is really you're keeping your focus on Jesus and Jesus' mercy on you and one with you in the mercy of God this way. And so by starting out with 3,000 times a day, you're dying to your own will. So in the prayer itself, you're dying to your head, to your thoughts, to move beyond thoughts. And on obedience, obediential fidelity to 3,000 times a day, you're dying to your own will. He says, without deliberately one more or one less. Do your best. And the point is, because you're human, you'll lose count a lot. You'll lose count a lot. But that's the point. That every time you lose count, you go back to pick up where you left off, knowing that in your frailty, you're to be touched by God's mercy on you in your frailty. And really, that's the prayer. See, the prayer is really a medium or a vehicle to coming to this mercy of God this way in the prayer itself. Yeah.
Coming to the end of yourself in a certain way.
Exactly. You come to the end of your own abilities, accepting the end of your own abilities as the opening through which God unexplainably takes you to yourself in what God can achieve and is achieving in you beyond your abilities, which is the mystery of grace, salvation, mystery of salvation. You know.
Well, I'm inspired. I think I might try getting a rosary and trying the prayer with the rosary. Yeah. Talking about the realm of the heart, you give some wonderful definitions that I want to read through in a moment. But just I'm curious about this word realm. When I think about the word realm in my own experience, it's been in like mythological stories, and it's a kingdom, a realm that the king or the queen oversees. And so, yeah, I'm just wondering how to think about this idea of a realm in a spiritual context.
Yes, I think in this sense, the realm of the heart refers to a dimension of our experience of ourselves and our life. And correspondingly, it's also the dimension of our present understanding of God and God's oneness in our life is a realm. It's deepening degrees of grace states of consciousness is a realm.
Yes, we can't see with our finite senses, but that we can experience.
That's right. And really what we're saying here, this will be very important. We say the realm of the heart, I know it's what we're going to be looking at now, really. This realm of the heart is this unitive mystery that alone is ultimately real. It's this oneness this way. But to find our way to the realm of the heart bears witness that we become exiled from it. So the whole path is the path of finding our way to experientially being grounded in the realm of the heart that is always there, this place of oneness between ourselves and God.
Lovely, thank you. I just thought I'd read back some of the statements you made about the realm of the heart, because you said a number of just stunningly beautiful things in a row, and I thought it would be nice just to hear them again. And so there's about 5. I'll read them just one at a time, Jim, and then maybe you'll comment at the very end.
You know what would help me?
Yeah.
To read them one at a time, and I'll respond briefly to each one.
Okay, let's do that then.
That would help me more.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. So the realm of the heart is a realm within and beyond ourselves, which is God's very presence, or God's inmost being, or God's very heart being given to us as persons created by God in the image and likeness of God. I was struck by the within and beyond in that statement. You know,
yes,
that
yes.
it's within and beyond ourselves.
That's right. So let's say, first of all, the realm of the heart is beyond us because it's the realm within God's heart to give us the depth of God's own heart is our very heart. That's how it's beyond us. And yet this mystery of this realm of the heart that's beyond us, because it's in God, is within us because it's God's realm beyond us being given to us as us. Mm-hmm. And so it's this unitive mystery of this communal mystery of the heart, one with God.
Beautiful. Did these sayings just flow out of you, Jim? It's amazing.
I don't know. It amazes me too. I'm used to it. It's poetry. It's kind of just a certain poetic, I don't know, I can't explain it.
Yeah, it's just stunning. I love it. So the next one was, it's our God-given, this is the realm of, another description of the realm of the heart. It's our God-given godly nature, our inmost being as God's beloved, in our eternal nothingness without God.
That's right. That's right. So what we say then, another way of saying it this way, is that ultimately, this is understanding creation this way, and the creation of ourselves by God as persons in the image and likeness of God, is that ultimately speaking, just one thing is happening. So the opening words of Genesis, in the beginning, God said, let there be light, let there be, let there be, let there be. So in the beginning, just one thing is happening, that the infinite presence of God is presencing itself, or is pouring itself out, kenosis, pouring itself out, and giving itself away in and as the intimate immediacy of the gift and the miracle of our very presence, the presence of others and the presence of all things in our communal nothingness without God. So it's not saying we are God. We are saying, not saying we are God, because it's rather to affirm our absolute nothingness without God. If God would cease at the count of 3, God's self-donating act of giving God's presence to us as our very presence, as the beloved, we would vanish at the count of 3, because we're absolutely nothing without God. But it's this is the paradox, but it's our very nothingness without God that makes our very presence to be the presence of God. And that's the realm of the heart. And this is why we need to transcend our head, because the head, by the very nature, the sequential nature of thought, an example I use that I think that really helps, when 2 people that love each other very, very much say to each other in a moment of their oneness in love, we are one. And they know they are one in love. They don't cease to be 2. Because if they would cease to be 2, they couldn't be there to know that they're one. But they don't live by the 2-ness, they live by the oneness. It gives meaning to everything they do in the 2-ness this way. So I think when you really think about it this way, you can kind of see this subtle kind of unitive sensitivity this way. This kind of, we all have moments like that. So this is bearing witness to the ultimacy of that unity. Realized.
I've been looking forward to going over this one with you. You said the realm of the heart, it's who we deep down really are in a transubstantial communion with God in a state of oneness. So I'm curious about a transubstantial communion.
Yeah. Here's one way I put it. It's just coming to me to put it this way. One of my other essays, I put it, is that the things on which we tend to base our security and identity, like our health, our reputation in our own eyes and the eyes of others, our belongings, our past, all of that. These are things that are considered substantive. You know, the house I live in, the clothes that I wear, my job, my reputation in the eyes of others, the reality of my career, all that's substantive. But when we look at these things very, very carefully, we see that they're all ephemeral, that is, they're all fleeting. And the self that identifies with those things is itself ephemeral. And so what we're talking about is a transubstantial identity. It's an identity that's not reducible to the sum total of all substantial things. The ultimate, we might say the most prevalent one for all of us, is love. See, love is not reducible to something that's substantive, meaning something that we can have or get or acquire, but it shimmers and shines through everything that we do have and gives it meaning if we see them as expressions of love. But unto themselves, like clinging and possessiveness of heart, it's myopic, it's claustrophobic. It's not enough for us. So we're looking for transubstantial realizations and as intimately experienced. See, incarnate infinity intimately realized that in my own heart, there is the shining forth of a quiet fullness that utterly transcends and permeates the substantive details of my life, which makes everything I do, if I see them in their nothingness without God, then I really see them as sacred. As soon as I see them as real all by themselves, I get imprisoned by them, because I get imprisoned in what I can gain and lose, and it goes on and on. It's like, so we're living a perpetual conversion in love. This is what the prayer helps us to do. It helps us to roll over into this boundless love that permeates. And the very fact we have such a hard time with this, and we stumble and fall this way and that, which we're keenly aware of our limitations. So if it's up to us, it's not looking good. But if God is merciful, that my peace doesn't depend on my ability to measure up to what I'm supposed to be. My peace depends on your infinite mercy on me and my inability to live up to who I deep down really am. My confidence is in that, not in my ability to do this. And the prayer embodies that, because if you really practice this prayer, you feel the poverty of yourself. And it's so disarmingly simple and delicate. It's so hard to, it opens us up to this mercy. It sustains us in it.
And you drop into that communion that's always there.
You do, and that's the realm of the heart. See, so and here's the thing, is we're trying to drop down in it experientially, but the ego resists the dropping down that we long for, because as soon as you drop down, you're not in control. See, as soon as I drop down, I love Kierkegaard's image. He talks about the leap of faith, and he says you make this leap beyond reason, beyond things, beyond this reason. He said, in the free fall, you're caught by Christ. Reflected in his eyes, you see your true face. There's no fear there. This way. And so the Jesus prayer is slowly finding, little by little by little, with God's grace. We don't so much make the leap, I think we fall. In the middle of a prayer, you fall down into this grace this way, and then you're sustained and it touches you this way.
Well, you made that very clear. Transubstantial communion.
There you
go. So the next one...
by the way, I want to say something. See, if I would have explained it, I would have made it something substantial. But I didn't explain it, but I bore witness to it. And by bearing witness to it, the heart recognizes it. And Merton called that spiritual communication. And I think that's the teachings of all these mystics. That's the depth dimension of everything Jesus says. Really, it's transfactual. It's not a set of facts or conclusions. Turning to the mystics will continue in a moment.
Many of us feel increasing anger at injustice, violence, and indifference in our world today. Join us March 14th for What Do I Do with My Anger? An online gathering featuring Richard Rohr and Brian McLaren. Learn ways of transforming anger into loving action, inspired by Father Richard's new book, The Tears of Things. Register today at cac.org/anger. That's cac.org/anger.
What does it mean to embody salt and light? In 2025, Richard Rohr's daily meditations turn to Jesus' timeless metaphor for reflecting love into the world. Amid this season of uncertainty, join us in living with trust, being salt and light. For 18 years, the daily meditations have inspired thousands of readers like you. Subscribe today at cac.org/saltlight2025. That's cac.org/SALTLIGHT2025.
Well, that's a good setup for the next one, because in the next one you use Jesus's words from John 10:10, and he said, where Jesus said, "I come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly." And you said the life of which he spoke was the life that was at once God's and our own, and this is the realm of the heart. So I love the way you're helping us read Scripture with this mystical lens, like the book describes, that we need to be able to see things from this mystical or contemplative lens. So yeah, that was really helpful.
It's so interesting. This is true of all the mystics, really, how they contemplatively, this is Origen, the deeper meaning, how they didn't read it as proof texts, like back and for things to believe, but they saw it as transparent metaphors of the realizations of God's unexplainable oneness with us. And so Jesus always spoke out of that depth this way. Here's another way of putting it. We might say too, see, it's the one life that is at once God's and our own. So in creation, and this is just of creation, the generosity of the infinite is infinite, and we are the generosity of God. We are the song God sings. See? So this God giving the infinity of God away is our very reality and are nothing without God. Eckhart says, it's not the act that God performs, it's the act that God is. God is the act of giving infinity away this way. And likewise, receiving that infinity, namely realizing it, is not an act that we perform, it's an act that we are. But in receiving it, and this is the setup, is we're graced with the gift of consciously receiving it, that we might in turn be moved to give our very self to God in love, who is given to us in love. And so this is the Jesus prayer. See? So every time we inhale, this is the silence of Jesus, this mercy, this merciful presence of Jesus being exhaled into us. And every time we exhale, we say the prayer, but it's the prayer that is a self-donating act of giving our very self in love to the love that with the next inhalation is giving itself to us, and in the reciprocity of love, destiny is fulfilled. And as that ripens, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper, this falling, one comes to this habitual state of living in that.
And Jim, you've mentioned it today a couple of times, but you bring back this idea that you've shared with all the mystics, that the story of the fall, the mythic story of the fall, and that we're unable to experience what's always true, and so we have to find a pathway back into that experience. But I love the way you told that story, this time using this language from The Way of the Pilgrim. So I just wanted to read a little bit back from that and then ask you a question. So you said, Adam and Eve were created by God in the image and likeness of God. Their human nature was translucent to the realm of the heart. It glowed with it. So I love the way you brought that in. And then you said the fall was trying to be like God without God. This is the idolatry of our illusory split off self. So I was curious about that definition too. But Yes. Any further comments on those two?
Yeah, yes. See, like God, let there be light, let there be stones and trees and stars. So then God said, and let us make the human person in our image and likeness, which is that's the oneness. See, as this identification with God, this identity in love. Then God endows us with a nature, a human nature. And this human nature, meaning not just reason and consciousness, it is that. But it's consciousness that's endowed by God with the capacity to realize the oneness that is at once God and ourselves. See? And so in the garden, in this mythic story of the garden, they were walking about. See, they were like God because they were created by God in the image and likeness of God. That's how they were like God, this way. So the whole mystery of the fall really is the serpent. You'll be like God if you eat this fruit. And so it's trying to be like God without God. And that creates this illusory self that is this exiled place. Now the kingdom of the realm of the heart is still fully the realm of the heart within us, because Merton says, is that in us, it belongs completely to God. But the ability to experience it and say yes to it is wounded. I love this imagery of the Protestant theologian Karl Barth. And he was talking about the Garden of Eden in Scripture and Revelation. And he was being interviewed by a reporter going over his book. And this reporter said to Karl Barth, you don't seriously think, do you, in the story that really the snake could talk? And he said, well, I don't think the question is whether or not a snake could actually talk. What I think matters is what the snake said. See, that's revelation.
Yeah.
If we take it literally, we miss the whole point. Yeah. But if we listen to what the snake said, see, then that's the realm of the truth of ourselves. It's transubstantially. It's the truth of ourselves. Yeah.
Yes. So this, you describe this illusory split of self. So the pilgrim, in taking on the prayer and then with the guidance of the starets, is really trying to come to the end of that illusory split of self. Is that the...
Yes. So what we're saying is that we're in this state, the split off state. So we are the beloved, infinitely loved, but experientially exiled to who we are as the beloved. And we attribute substantiality to this illusory separate self, that we're real without God and trying to make it work and fit it together. So, but God endlessly is always reaching out to us, always. And so in human consciousness, one way of looking at it would be God's always reaching out, the transcendentals of being the one, the good, the true, and the beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
God's reaching out to the awareness that our life matters in ways that cannot be calculated. There's a value in life that cannot be explained. Secondly, the one is every time we seek unity, is God. Even though we're not religious at all, we're not conscious, there's just something about the sense of fulfillment or happiness, because it's true to the dowry of our being to seek forms of oneness, community, and oneness. The good, when we seek the good, which is the will through love, to love, to seek that which is one, to seek that which is good, the one, the good, the true, and the beautiful, that which is beautiful. So that's kind of the implicit light of the heart shining out through the human experience itself. And when we stumble and fall, it shines out through the inner awareness of the preference of mercy over harsh cruelty, that we be endlessly merciful towards ourselves and everybody else. And then the next level is where then this human exile condition then is illumined by faith. By faith. And through the gift of faith then, this obscure certainty in our heart, Jesus said, I am with you always. It's an intimate experience of what faith proclaims. See, God is one with us. And God, even though we're fallen, God has met us and joined us and is one with us in our fallen state. That we're still infinitely precious in our fallen state. This is Jesus. And this is where the pilgrim was in the beginning of the story. See? Efficacious unto holiness. So we're saying that what if the pilgrim never would have had the awakening? He would have spent the rest of his days in devotional sincerity. He'd be in heaven now. And we'll all be there joining him soon enough. It's more than enough. See? But sometimes what happens, there can be the charism of this call to the radicalization of this unit of life. There's a way for us to follow this path. And this is what the story is about. So as we listen to the story, as the pilgrim shares his story of this, we can listen to pick up sensitivities to how the very fact we're touched by the beauty of it bears witness that we're resonating with it, because we in some way are already on this path, whether we wouldn't sense any beauty in the pilgrim's story. But it's strangely relevant, there's something intimate about it. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I have a number of follow-up questions to what you've just shared, Jim. And the first one is about, you say this in the talk as well, about, you kind of say at the human level, there are ways we're drawn into the realm of the heart. And you talk about, as you just did, the true, the good, and the beautiful. And I'm really curious about that. So you don't necessarily have to be religious to touch into the realm of the heart. And would you say it's giving up a certain amount of control because you were talking about how that illusory split off self needs to feel like it's in control, and that's kind of what keeps it alive and keeps us away from this experience of the realm of the heart. So is that a commonality with the true, the good, and the beautiful?
Yes, it is. I want to put it this way. I was a number of years a clinical psychologist. I work with trauma. And sometimes people would choose me for therapy because they wanted their spirituality to be resourced in their trauma, but some wouldn't. Mm-hmm. Some wouldn't. And so for some people, there wouldn't be any explicit mention of God at all. But here's the intimacy of it all. The person comes in hurting, not just because of the symptoms that they're experiencing, that they're depressed or anxious or stressful lives. There is that. But the pain that they're in is somehow closing off experiential access to the very value of themselves that they know is there. And as it unfolds, as they walk the walk through the laying bare of the pain, what starts emerging out of that walk is a shining forth of that value. Like, I matter. And since I matter, it asks out of me that I be faithful to the gift of my life, that I be true to it and follow it. And so that way, when two people are like that together, it's like meditation for two, and you're on holy ground together because you're in the abyss-like depth of the gift of the unfolding of someone discovering who they are and who they're called to be. It's priceless. You can't put a price on it. It's just, and I would say God's the infinity of that value, even though the person wouldn't consciously occur to them to put it that way. But if they are endowed with the gift of faith, it allows them to see an experiential understanding of what the words of faith mean.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Yes. I find that just so encouraging, especially in today's day and age where so many people are turning away from the church. And I know there's a lot of grandparents, parents, etc., that are concerned about, how to bring the realm of the heart into the life of their children or their grandchildren. And so I think this is a beautiful encouragement that it doesn't have to be explicitly religious to find our way there.
Not true. Because I think what we want for say parents with their children, for example, if they're Catholic and they want their children to, that's understandable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But really I think what parents want for their children is they want their children to be happy. And they really want their children to be loving, vulnerable, patient, present, sensitive people. And we might even say then that's the essence of religion. Because God's the infinity of that. So there are some people who are not overtly religious, as in a belief system, that are more deeply religious in this sense than the deeply religious person carrying their Bible around with them. That's right. And I think these mystical traditions, they shed light on that. I think it's really true. I like what that's saying by Thomas Merton. There's a lot of Catholics losing their faith, and they're losing it in church, because it's seen as empire, as a set of teachings, and it isn't teaching this, which is the lifeblood of the gospel, really. Yes.
Well, back to some of the instructions from the prayer. I did have a question for you, Jim. I was curious to know that when you entered the monastery, if you had this gradual increase of things, so he goes from 3,000 to 6,000 to 12,000. And I wondered if you just, when you join the monastery, if they gradually build you up to things or they just throw you in at the deep end.
I think what they did at the monastery, first I understand the approach was different, but the effect was the same. Is when I was there, this is a cloistered monastery, so there's no active ministry, so you didn't leave. We lived in silence, didn't talk to each other, chanted the Psalms throughout the day, got up at 2:30 in the morning to chant vigils, went to bed at 7:30 at night. And the downtimes during the day was for prayer. You could sit in the church or walk in the cemetery or walk in the woods or read the Bible. You could. And you were just left there. There was no television, there was no radio, there was no ministry, there was no family, it was just endless ordinariness of life this way. And what happens is in the rhythms of the unfoldings of the ordinariness, it gets unexpectedly deeper in unexplainable ways. See? And how can I then be faithful to this or listen to this or walk with this? And the image I like to share from Merton, he's describing a Sunday afternoon in the monastery, which was just like every other day in the monastery, except there's no manual labor. So you still got up at 2:30 in the morning, went to bed at 7:30 at night, did nothing all day long, except chant the Psalms and walk in the woods and walk in the cemetery. And he says to the monastery, he said, and the young monks lean sadly up against walls, asking questions that have no answers. The old monks are silent because they've given up interest in speech, because they've crossed over into realms that can't be said. See, because if you're asking the question that has an answer, once you get an answer, then you're looking for the next answer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what if you're asking the question that has no answer? See, and you're opening yourself to the presence of God, and God's not an answer. See, God like washes through you unexplainably. So in a way, the Jesus prayer invites us to that. See? It's kind of the rhythms of endlessly patient unfoldings of your receptive heart to being unexplainably accessed by this oneness, taking us unexplainably to itself or unexplainably transforming us into itself in the ordinariness of our days. All these contemplative traditions, all these mystics that's what all this is about, I think.
Yeah. And that leads beautifully into this point you made about the pilgrim coming to this. You talked about sustained absorption, but that he wants to be alone. There's a phase in this journey where we're separate from other people. We want to be separate from other people. And you said that this can even go on for years. And so I guess in the monastery, you are separated by silence and by living in the monastery. But
you know how I put it as I talk to people in spiritual direction like this and so on, is if you're drawn to this direction, you're less and less able to tolerate small talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're good for a while. But how about those Yankees? What do you think? Half hour later, I think I'm done. and so, and also the TV and the commercials and the chatter and all that. And so in a certain way, it distances you from patterns that are actually patterns of distraction. T.S. Eliot says, I was distracted from the distraction by a distraction. I pull a number, I'll be distracted by you later. See, but I've been touched by something that's not a distraction. But I long to, and therefore there's a certain way it quietly separates us, either by the need for alone time or the need for kind of a greater sensitivity to our own interiority and so on. But it's an alone time in which we're actually distancing ourselves at one level, on this horizontal level, because we're being deepened by God at this vertical depth dimension of a oneness that utterly transcends and permeates the realities of the day by day. But then what happens, and this comes up later in the chapter, in the last talk on this chapter on the cloud we'll do next time, is what it does then, it comes full circle and it radicalizes your sensitivity to the sufferings of other people. That is, you're able to see through the chatter to the beauty of who they are, you're able to see and to be one and with and for them, joining them, where they are. And that's the balance of relatedness.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think, Jim, in this phase, you talk about how in the presence of the starret, the pilgrim sees what he's searching for and knows it's real. So even though the starret is feeling this desire to be alone, he has the comfort of the starret guiding him along the way.
Yes, how I put it for me is when I went to the monastery, and I was drawn there by his writings in high school, 9th grade, writing through high school. And I'd be sitting with him in spiritual direct, just like the pilgrim with the starrets. Merton and I would sit together.
You'd be with Thomas
and,
Merton.
The point is that the contemplative experience recognizes itself. And you can tell when you're in the presence of someone in whom your own heart's desire has been realized. See, that your heart has not deceived you. That the person abides habitually in this underlying divinity that permeates everything this way. And you sit with them and you seek their guidance in the hopes that what has happened to them might happen to you. But it goes the other way around, too. The starrets, because he was in this state, there was an empathy, and he could sense that the pilgrim was being led to it in the very first fumbling phases of it. And sometimes, and this happens with the pilgrim, the teacher recognizes the student before the student recognizes the teacher. Notice at first, when he first meets him, he didn't want to go.
Yeah.
But when he told his story of longing, he said, come now to the monastery, because he could tell, in the longings of his heart, that he was being led to something. And then in their relationship, then, is this is how the lineage is passed it on this way. I love that in one of the letters of Plato. He said, as regard to my true teachings, he said, I've never written them down and I never will. They're handed down from student to teacher in a personal relationship, and a self-sustaining fire catches hold in the heart of the student. See? And the fire is the fire that you sense in the presence of the teacher. That's the fire of God, see, shining out through the person who's yielded to that, and they embody that in their ordinariness. This is very close in Hinduism to the guru. In the presence of the guru, you're in the presence of God. I love Richard Rohr saying that when the realized yogi dies in India, the ashram's empty, see, until the next person. And then you realize that this path that you're being led on is the path in which what has happened to this person is, with God's grace, is happening to you. And why? So that you might pass it on. See? You might pass it on from one awakened heart to the next. And one more little piece of this. See, I've never written it down and I never will, he says. In all due respect to the good Mr. Plato, Jacques Maritain, the great Thomistic philosopher, his wife Risa was a mystic. And they were in bed together reading, and she was reading the dialogues of Plato, and she started weeping and got out of bed and knelt on the floor. See? So we haven't had the chance to sit with the stars. It'd be nice to have lunch with them and talk. But you know what? Even though it's not a face-to-face encounter, his deathless presence touches us in the words, because it's written down, and that's the text. See? And I think those are echoes of the Gospels. Also, I think, and so it's kind of very mysterious, really, this logos that Merton once said to D.T. Suzuki about these meetings where someone is enlightened, these Zen stories. And he writes to Suzuki, and he says, when I, as a Christian, read these stories of Buddhist enlightenment, something leaps off the page and says to me, this is true. And I'd like to know if I, as a Christian, can dialogue with you as a Buddhist about this common ground. See, it's the realm of the heart. See, it's this realm of the shining out. So.
And I love that vision of catching fire.
Yeah.
And that's what we're longing for in our own life is for that to catch fire.
Thomas Merton once said, all renewal in religious communities is finding a way back to the fire of the founder. Mm-hmm. And I also love in the Desert Fathers and the Desert Mothers, one of their little stories is that one of the monks comes to the abbot and says, I'm trying to find my way to this awakening. And he said, well, follow the rule and love the community. And he said, well, I already do that. And so the abbot stood up, put out his hands this way, and it said, and his fingers became like 10 lamps of fire. And he said, why not become all fire? And that's the lineage, really.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
And here's the point. In the realm of the heart, the God-given realm of the heart, you are this fire.
Yes. Yes.
And what you're trying to do is to be led and lured and transformed in the ways where it consciously burns as an unexplainable divinity, the ordinariness of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lovely. And I like the encouragement you give us to find the teacher or the mystic that really, you feel that fire starting to burn. But what's amazing about you, Jim, is you have found the fire across these mystics and, can invite us into it.
Here's my sense of it, really. I think if we're called to this path, and let's say in the Turning to the Mystics podcast, we go from mystic to mystic, and for whatever reason, there's a certain mystic that just gets to you. See? And you can walk around with it, underline it, carry it around, keep the book under your pillow and walk around. And you can open randomly to any page and read it out loud because everything they say counts in this unexplainable way. It's like that. But what happens along the way with God's grace, you can increase the repertoire. See, because one mystic caught fire within your heart, that same fire, you start to recognize it in the words of another mystic. Another mystic. So it's so personal how this works. Some people, that doesn't happen. By the way, the fire of the Gospels is infinitely more than enough. It's the distilled essence of what all the mystics are saying, mystically understood this way. And then what Merton would say, and sometimes that distilled fire isn't just recognized in our own lineage, but we recognize it in the lineage of another tradition. In other words, because you can recognize someone who's been transformed this way. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Well, just one last thing I'd like to talk to you about and just really celebrate in this text is the way it becomes so somatic. I think, especially in today's society, we are so valued for what we think and what we know. And so this idea of trying to come into the body, and I love the instruction that there's a way the mind can start to hear the prayer in the throat, and it would kind of flip the script on how we're learning something or how we're becoming something.
I want to say about therapy first. The whole therapeutic process, let's say being healed from internalized trauma and so on, a person starts out explaining the story they have. But where it really starts is in the very talking about the hurting place. The hurt arises. And it arises as a somatic experience. They tear up, they're moved, they might feel embarrassed, like all of a sudden they're vulnerable. And so all of a sudden they drop down into bodily dimensions of knowing. See, they're not explanations of anything, but it's the unexplainable immediacy of the felt sense of the truth of themselves and their pain that they're looking for.
If they can stay with it. Right?
If they stay with it. And that's what the therapist
yeah.
is for, is how to find a way to make it safe to stay with it. Because what happens often without help, we get in touch with too much at once. We get re-traumatized, we distance again. So how can we help someone stay in that middle range? If we don't get close enough to touch it, it festers. We get too fast, we'll get flooded. And so the therapist models, and also notice that you're being reparented in love because they're staying with you in it this way. So what the relationship with the starts is like that at this mystical level. He's guiding it, and so he's pacing him to go beyond himself.
Yes.
It's 3,000, but also he's dropping down to get out of your head. Because he says to him, you see, the pilgrim is struggling. He says, your unmeasured zeal is in the way.
I love
your
that.
sophomoric enthusiasm is in the way. And he said, what do I do about that? And then you start to discover the problem is the very way you're going about it. But it's because of who you are. So how do I not do that? And he said, well, rather than figure out some how, which would be another strategy, what he's going to say, notice the power is pronouncing the words is the throat. And so the mind is listening to the body say it. And then it becomes, the word became flesh and dwelt among us. See, it's in the body. So it moved, and then when he says, sit very still, look down like you're looking into your own heart, you see like a yoga practice is a state of complete absorption in a bodily groundedness of dropping down into the realm of the heart, is in those depths, one with God, one with us, breathing in and breathing out.
Mm-hmm. A deep state of presence where the mind's not off somewhere. It's kind of so great.
Exactly. Yeah. And also notice that even in this, sometimes in an absorbed state, it can become so absorbed all the thoughts disappear. Mm-hmm. There are moments like that.
Yeah.
But really, it's like around the edges, the hum of the thoughts are still there, but you're so absorbed in the singularity of this love. See, you're not carried off. Or every time you are, you circle back around and be reinstated again to God's mercy on you as you keep getting carried off this way. And it kind of starts in the intimacy of those patterns, I think. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, there's always much more to talk about, but I think Corey would be happy if we stopped about here. This is a good session for people listening to be able to take in. One thing I did want to bring up, Jim, I think in this season there's a new chime in your house. Am I right with that? There's a new clock chiming?
Yes, there is. But now that you say that, when Maureen and I decorated this place 30 years ago, we were going to get a grandmother clock, a chiming one. But instead we got a long hand-carved wooden clock. It hangs on the wall. It's about 4 feet long, almost 5 feet long, really. And it chimes on the quarter hour, half hour, and the hour. But it just so happens, getting into my life here, it just so happens we loved and the pendulum swings back and forth. It was a pendulum clock. I liked it.
Yeah.
And it stopped working about 10 years ago. And I appreciate it. It was beautiful. We just left it there. And then what happened, about 2 months ago, it was hanging there on the wall, and I would try to start the pendulum, and it would stop. It wouldn't keep going. So I moved the bottom of the clock over 1 inch off center, and it worked perfect.
Oh my gosh!
So I went to the watchmaker, who's I've been going to for years, and he said he'll clean it, go over the whole thing. He said it may take like 3 months to do it. It's very meticulous. He has to take it home and take it apart and put it back together again. And so I'm looking over now, it's not there because it's at the watchmaker.
Oh, okay.
And he even increased it. He said, it may take up to 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, don't extend the time any longer. I'm 80 years old, I might be dead. You know what I mean? At like a cutoff point. So anyway, but it is. It's a lovely. But I have another little antique little ship's clock or a little brass clock. The charm is quieter. So
that's the one that we heard today. Okay.
You heard
yeah. The big one's not there today, or is?
No. Did you hear a chime today?
I did hear the chime today, yes.
You heard the little one. I
must have heard the little one.
It's a ship's clock.
But I have heard the new big one in some of your sessions. Yeah. Once you got it working, I guess. Yeah. It'll be back next season, maybe.
I hope so. And let's hope I'll be back next season. You know what I mean?
I certainly hope so.
I hope so.
You can just exist in the realm of the heart in our
Exactly.
presence. Thank you very much.
That's right. Exactly. That's exactly right. Good.
Don't disappear completely. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you very much. I think this will help the students, this dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Turning to the Mystics, a podcast created by the Center for Action and Contemplation. We're planning to do episodes that answer your questions. So if you have a question, please email us at podcasts@cac.org or send us a voicemail. All of this information can be found in the show notes. We'll see you again soon.
Do you feel called to walk a more contemplative path? The Center for Action and Contemplation is an educational nonprofit supporting the journey of inner transformation. Our programs and resources will help grow your consciousness, deepen your prayer practice, and strengthen your compassionate engagement with the world. Learn more about our resources, such as publications, podcasts, email series, and events at www.cac.org.